I'm not even going to do Tales from the Couch out of respect to Jimmy Butler. This should all be about Jimmy Butler. It's going to be about 95% of Jimmy Butler, not knocking the Lakers or anything like that, because I have more to say on that series, and we still have some work to do on that one. But 56 points from Jimmy Butler last night. The Heat's win. They're now up 3-1 on the Milwaukee Bucks. Jimmy Butler now is ranked number one on my I have this ranking as well. It's called That Motherfucker ranking. I'm sorry to swear so early at the top of the podcast. I know as some of the parents are commuting with the kids, earmuffs. I'll try not to do it again so soon. I didn't give you much of a heads up, but it needs to be said. It needs to be vulgar. It needs to be violent. It needs to be all of those things because that's who Jimmy Butler is. Giannis has always kind of been my number one guy for those rankings. And look, he can kind of, I don't know how official these are, so I wouldn't get too worried about it. Raymond Felton at times has been number one because, as I've said numerous times, Raymond Felton has the epitome of the I slept with your mom face. That's just whenever I saw Raymond Felton make any facial expression, the first thing I thought of was like, that's what his face looks like. But he wasn't as good as those other two guys. So the rankings, again, not super scientific. So 56 points for Jimmy Butler. That's tied for the fourth most ever in a playoff game in NBA history. Michael Jordan, 63 back in 86. They lost that game. I can't even imagine what that'd be like today. Like, oh, yeah, but he still lost. All right, cool. Elgin Baylor, 61. Donovan Mitchell, not that long ago, 57. Charles Barkley, 56 points in 1994 against the Warriors. And now Jimmy Butler in that group with 56. Michael Jordan, by the way, 50 or more points in the playoffs. 8 times, 8 of them. So I'm just going to take you through how I experienced it. Butler, 22 points in the first quarter. And when the game started, I thought Milwaukee was winning that game as much as any single playoff game so far. I'm like, look, okay, enough of this. Milwaukee's going to win. It's going to be 2-2. Giannis is back. And I know that physically at times it looked like he was struggling a bit. And then he had that weird leg thing. I just think the playoffs are tough. I mean, a lot of guys are going to be feeling things. And I know specific to him falling on his back like that and missing so much time already in this series. But I don't really like that as an excuse. I also think a lot of players are very demonstrative in the way they're kind of feeling their pain. I think basketball players do that a lot. And it's not necessarily even a knock. I'm not talking about exaggerating, but it's just, you'll notice with certain players, it's like, man, he's constantly on that player's face that he's struggling the whole time. So in that first quarter, Bam gets his second personal foul almost immediately. You're like, all right, that's exactly what the Heat need in this one. But Butler gets Giannis kind of on a dunk, right? It's not like full-blown on him, but Giannis is coming over to help, which, again, credit to Giannis for being one of the few stars that would actually go to the rim to challenge somebody when they have the angle on him. And Butler throws down that dunk, and you're like, okay, all right. He goes for 22 points in the first quarter. And I cannot, his effort level in this quarter, where very early on it felt like, all right, this is going to be 2-2 here in 2 hours. It's 33-28. And I'm like, is this really happening? Is this seriously going to happen? And here's another thing I loved about Jimmy Butler. As exhausted as he was, and he was spent at the end of the first quarter. And right before the first quarter was actually over, there was a little break in play, and you could see Butler, and you're like, that guy's going Dellavedova here in 2015. He's dying. And there was a play where he was off the ball, and I'm like, will he move? Will he cut to the middle to try to help out on this possession? Knowing that he's still the best option, but he was just this exhausted. And I'm like, a lot of guys would just kind of stand there and be like, I just don't have it on this one possession. We're in the game, whatever. And the guy ran to the middle. He ran to the middle, gave a hard cut, off the ball, kind of on the backside of it. And just that effort alone, I was like, I can't believe it was the smallest thing. I'm like, I can't believe he even made that cut as exhausted as he was. So it's 33-28. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And it's 57-50 at the half. I'm like, is this, again, I'm sitting at home going like, is this seriously happening? But Butler was so tired after the first quarter, he only scored 2 points in the second quarter. I thought Butler was still gassed in the third quarter. That's with a halftime break because of how hard he went in the first. He ends up with 11 points in the third quarter. But there's a Giannis element to this as we run through some of the third quarter play-by-play and scoring, where I started to feel like, okay, he's back in the way that he's back. Like Giannis's physicality, we talk about Steph's gravity, his shooting pulls everyone, his cuts, all of that stuff. Giannis's physicality is his gravity. The same way all the stuff that we look at with Steph and how he pulls everything. Let's go over some plays. Miami basically helps off at every corner on the Giannis side of the drive, which isn't always the rule. Different teams have different rules. Some are more standard than others. Every time with Giannis, you're helping. You don't care. You'll leave the shooter. Is it every single time? You know what I'm saying here, right? There was another play where Giannis is at the three-point line. It looks like he may initiating something. Bam, and another player stay with Giannis. He throws it down to Lopez for two. All right? 81-68. Lopez, who had 36 points in this game, by the way, hits a step-back jumper against Kevin Love. Love is like in complete disbelief, right? And at that point at 81-68, I'm like, okay, all right, we're back to normal here. You do know basketball a little bit. At 94-83, another basket after that, Giannis is lost underneath the basket. All right. And lost is probably not the right way to describe it, but he's under the basket. He's at the baseline. Three players are on him. Somebody has left the corner. Somebody else has left the big man. And then his initial defender. He actually, whether it was a fake to the corner or a no look and then pass to Portis, it's an incredible pass because it looks like he's stuck. Like, what's going to happen? What's he doing? He's under the basket. And yet he gives a look and a slight hesitation where the defenders don't even know what to do, and then Portis just rolls in behind everybody for the easy layup. 94-83. Two stay with Giannis in his zone. The pressure is so high up on Giannis in his zone that Brook Lopez and Pat Connaughton are 2-versus-1 against Zeller, where either one of them could have done whatever you wanted. The next possession, 4 stayed with Giannis. All right, 4 guys all took a step towards Giannis as he went to initiate the offense. He throws it to Pat Connaughton for a wide open 3. It was a miss, but it was just staggering, like to watch it back in slow motion going, look at that, 4 guys all looking at him. There was a 3-man Miami wall. Lopez knows the wall is stepping up to Giannis as he's past the free throw line. Lopez knows exactly what's going to happen. It's an amazing cut by him. He scores 98-85. Butler comes back in at 8-11 in the fourth quarter, 98-87. Now, with the 11 points in the third quarter, you're feeling like, all right, he's back. But how much is he going to have left? Well, he had it all left. It's 101-89 with 6 minutes left. Butler scores 20 of his 22 points in the fourth quarter from that moment on. He outscored Milwaukee to close the game by himself, 20-13. Now, we could go back and play the game of like, what did Milwaukee do wrong? Schematically, what could they have done different? Is Bud a little too stubborn? All that stuff. I thought it was pretty simple. I'm watching this game for like an hour and a half, just expecting Milwaukee to win. I think that's what they thought was going to happen. Yeah, serious. And you start getting tired. You start going for all those Jimmy Butler fakes. You have to stay super disciplined with him. You can't leave your feet. You can't lean. He's going to get you. It wasn't about the free throws last night for Butler because of all the other buckets that he had. But I think it's pretty simple. Milwaukee's like, all right, we got this. And they didn't have it. They didn't have it. Milwaukee has the best player. They have the better depth. They have overwhelming size advantage. The point guard is better, although you want to talk about not getting a ton of shit for some bad shooting playoff performances. I submit Drew Holiday. He has some duds, man. Like he'll have a couple games where you're like, whoa, but that's the thing for Drew, which is kind of good for him, right? Like, man, we should talk about Drew Holiday more. You want to be, all right, you want to go into that group? You're awesome. You're really good. Everybody'd love to have you. But when there's other dudes on the team that are higher profile players than you, you can have a 6 for 18 and a 6 for 19. He had, combined from 3 in games 1 and 4, he's 4 of 20 from 3. And he doesn't get to the free throw line at all. He has 7 assists in the last 2 games after having 27 in the first 2. So will he turn it around at some point? I don't know. But go back to some of the other game log stuff. Not to say there aren't other stars with bad shooting nights, but Drew never gets any heat for any of it. So best player, depth, the size advantage, point guard. Milwaukee, I believe, has 5 of the top 7 players in this. Miami is 25th on offense this regular season. 25th. 112 plus points per 100 possessions. The teams that they're in that group with, from 25th down, Orlando, Houston, Detroit, San Antonio, Charlotte. Not in the playoffs. Not up 3-1 on Milwaukee. I am on record for years now that the regular season and playoffs, like, I don't think we've ever seen a bigger gap, okay? But it shouldn't be this big. It shouldn't be this big. Miami loses to Atlanta. They get smashed in the rebounds. That's not even a game. And I'm like, yeah, here we go. They're down to Chicago in the fourth quarter, right? They're down a point, about 3:46. Kobe White hit that huge three. Again, there's still plenty of time left in that game, but I was like, all right. Miami went on a 15-1 run to close that game out. I don't like the 4-game sample size in the playoffs. I think it can be a little like interesting. I used it with Sacramento against Golden State because of Sacramento's defense being so bad. And be like, hey, Golden State, this kind of offense, you've held up somewhat here defensively in these first 2 games. But again, it's 2 games. Even 4 games into the playoffs, I don't like it. Miami's got the best offense. That means Milwaukee has the worst defense. I realize that Milwaukee's only had Giannis for 49 minutes of the 192 in this playoff series so far, okay? A major factor. But you have to win last night's game. You have to win last night's game if you're actually a championship contender. So does that write them off? No. When you look at the FanDuel odds for the teams to come back down 3-1, it's not even that great value to bet Milwaukee down 3-1 in this series. Everyone watching it, I think, feels the same way. And yet Miami's up 3-1 because of Jimmy Butler, despite all of those factors. It's one of the best playoff performances we've ever seen. And to this point, it's the most surprising storyline that we've maybe had in the NBA this season.